Okay, so our topic for the evening is oil or wax. Does authenticity matter? Rabbi Zira and I were riding in the car together and trying to figure out what we wanted to do for Hanukkah, and we didn't want to give the same old Chanukah shiurim because there are certain traditional topics that just resurface consistently, And as we were talking, it occurred to me that this would be a fun topic to discuss, because I think it's broader than the technical halachic question of what do you fulfill the mitzvah with, oil versus wax. I think there's a lot to be gained from really looking at this in terms of what's behind the choice of oil or wax. So that's what I'd like to do, is look at this on a deeper level than just the simple practical question of can you fulfill a mitzvah with one, can you fulfill the mitzvah with the other. So I'll ask you the question, first. What do you think, wax or oil? Which one would you think is preferred? Oil. Alan says oil. Why oil?
Because that's what they use in the temple times.
Because that's what they used in the menorah in the Beis HaMikdash. So even though the menorah in the Beis HaMikdash, of course, had 7 branches rather than 8, right? Nonetheless, they used oil in the Beis HaMikdash, and therefore we should use oil on Chanukah. A reasonable suggestion. We're going to come back to that idea. Any other? Out of curiosity, how many people use oil? Wax?
My kids.
Oh. Well, wax for your kids? Okay, fine. Mixed but not in the same menorah, hopefully.
Right, not the same.
Now, the Sechem discusses not using a mix in the same menorah because then it confuses people who are looking. They think it's two different sets of flames. I tend to use oil, especially now that you can get those prepackaged, solid oil things. So save me from the problem of the drowning wick. So the truth of the matter is that if you look at the first source here, the Gemara in Shabbos Daf Chaf Aleph, it seems to be fairly straightforward. Amar Rav Huna said, Psilos ushmanim sha'amru chachamim ein malikin ben b'Shabbos, ein malikin ben b'Chanukah, bein b'Shabbos, bein b'chol. Rav Huna says, wicks and oils that you're not allowed to use on Shabbos, you're also not allowed to use on Chanukah, whether it's Shabbos Chanukah or whether it's weekday Chanukah. Now here he's talking about what you're not allowed to use on Shabbos. Why would something not be permissible for use on Shabbos? Why would something be disqualified?
A wavering flame is going to require adjustment, or
right. So one reason to disqualify it is that if it doesn't produce a good light, and you might come to adjust the flame, then we don't want using that on Shabbos. And then the other is the concern about something that's foul smelling. Right? You're supposed to be using the light at your Shabbos table. You don't want something that has a bad smell. So he says also, no using it on Chanukah. Amar Rava Meitama de Rav Huna. Rava says, what's Rav Huna's rationale? Why does he apply this to Chanukah? Kasavar Kavsa Zakukla Umuter Lishtamesh La'ora. He says, first of all, because he believes that if it goes out, you have to fix it. So therefore, don't use one that's not going to produce a good light. Don't use one that may go out. And you're allowed to benefit from the light, so we don't want you using one that has a bad smell. Rechista says you're allowed to use it during the week, not on Shabbos. He says if it goes out, then there's no concern, and therefore I should be okay using such lights. But you're allowed to benefit from the light, and therefore he's concerned that if it goes out on Shabbos, then you will end up relighting it. So he says not on Shabbos. During the week, fine. Shabbos, no. Amar Bizera, Amar Masna, V'Amri Lo, Amar Bizera, Amar Rav. Then we get our third view among the Amoraim, and this is the view that we bring as halacha. Psilos ushmanim sha'amru chachamim ein madlikin behen b'Shabbos, madlikin behen b'Chanukah, bein b'chol, bein b'Shabbos. That which you're not allowed to use on Shabbos, you may use on Chanukah, whether during the week, whether on Shabbos, and they go on through the rationale, and they conclude by saying that Rav Yochanan accepted the position of Rav, and that's what we hold. You're allowed to use all the wicks, you're allowed to use all of the oils, and therefore I might stop there and say, no further questions, right? You can use wax, you can use oil, and you're done. But it is more complicated than that. If you take a look at source number 2, the Gemara further on in Shabbos on Daf Chav Gimel Amud Aleph. Amar Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi said, "Kol hashmanim kulan yafin lener." all oils are good for ner, v'shemen zayis min hamuvchar, and olive oil is the best. Jump down to number 3 for a moment. We haven't seen the Gemara that Tosfos is commenting on yet, but it's going to be part of this Gemara. Look what Tosfos says. Nira da'aner Chanukah koi. It appears that this source, what we're reading in number 2, is talking about Chanukah. When Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi says, all oils are good, but olive oil is the best, he's talking about near Chanukah. We'll come back to that Tosfos, but I just wanted to show you that so you understand that source number 2 is about Chanukah, and it says olive oil is best. Then along comes Abaye. Amar Abaye v'reish hav mahader mar amishcha d'shumshumi. Abaye says the master, which generally means Rabbah when Abaye says that, Rabbah used to go looking for sesame oil. Amar hay mashach naharit tfei. He says, sesame oil is good because it lasts longer, burns longer. Came into Shamal al-Hadar Bishua ben Levi, but then he heard Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi say olive oil is best. Mahadar mishcha d'zeisa. Then he started looking for olive oil to light. Amar hay tzalil naharei tfei, because he said the light is more pure. So if I have to choose between a flame that will burn longer and a flame that will burn more clearly, better to go the one that will burn more clearly. That's olive oil, and therefore, even though source 1 said anything is good, nonetheless, source number 2 says that olive oil is best. Why should olive oil be best? Burns nicely, right? That's the rationale that he gave. Is that what Alan had said in the beginning when I asked why you would use olive oil? No, he said it was about the Beis Hamikdash. So Moshe Feinstein in his Divros Moshe, it's Divros Moshe the Shabbos Chelik Aleph Ha'arach Chav Gimel, notes that based on our Gemara, it seems fairly clear that Abaye thinks sesame oil is better because it burns longer, and then he finds out that olive oil is better because it burns clearer. Not because of the miracle being with olive oil, not because the Beis Hamikdash being with olive oil, but because it is fundamentally a better, technically better product to use, and that's what you see in as the outgrowth of this Gemara. So that Tosfos comments here, Nira da'aner Chanukah koi. When Abaye says that Rabbah used to look for sesame oil, that meant for Chanukah candles because it would produce a longer light, and so on. Okay, so what we now have is an acceptance of any fuel, an acceptance of any wick, right? That was our starting point. Any fuel is good, any wick is good. Then we said it becomes more complicated than that because the Gemara goes on to say, I prefer olive oil, but it's not for the reason of what went on in the Beis Hamikdash. It's not for the reason of what... It's not for the reason of what happened on the original Chanukah. Rather, it's because it's a better burning flame. So I want to apply this now for us, Bismanenu, and to ask, so is there now a preference for olive oil? And is there a preference for other oils as opposed to wax? What about sesame oil? What about canola oil? Right? Maybe low cholesterol oil for your menorah. What should we be using? What's ideal here? So in order to do this, we have to look further into the question of why we would want to use olive oil. So if you take a look in the Shulchan Aruch in source number 4, Kol hashmanim v'hapsilos ksherim l'ner Chanukah. All oils and all wicks are kosher for Chanukah. Ve'ava pi she'ein hashmanim nimshachem achar apsila, ve'ein ha'or nislayach ba'osam apsilos. Even if the oil doesn't really get drawn well by the wick, and even if the light doesn't really catch on those wicks, in other words, he's following for you what we saw in source number 1. Right? He's following the Gemara in Shabbos Chav Aleph, which says that everything is good. However, we have numerous Ashkenazi Rishonim who seem to prefer olive oil. So take a look at source 4 actually, the Ramah. Umihu shemen zayis mitzvah min hamufchar. He says, but olive oil is the best. I'm pausing at that point in the Ramah. They give you here the Mordechai, the Kolbo, and the Maharil. So the truth is, the Mordechai is problematic as a source for this. Because it's true that the Mordechai says that the Maharam used to use olive oil, but our editions say that he was talking about Shabbos Chanukah. Not every day during Chanukah, but Shabbos Chanukah. And the idea is that olive oil would be better for Shabbos, and therefore Shabbos Chanukah he'll use it. It wasn't about Chanukah per se. However, the Maharil is in source 5. Haya, this is a report of the Maharil's practice. Haya Maharil tochev hashamash lamala mikol haneros. First of all, I brought the whole piece in the Maharil because I thought this was interesting. You know, you get menorahs, the oil menorahs, the shamash is usually below all the other flames, right? If you make a menorah in school, your shamash is always higher. Right? You have the long row of whatever they are, bolts or whatever it is that's going to hold the candle in place, and then you have the elevated one for the shamash. You get a nice silver menorah, you graduate to that, and suddenly the shamash became lower than everything else. So the Maharil is not happy. He says, the Maharil used to tochev hashamash lamala mikol haneros. He would put the shamash above all the other flames. V'siman lasum shvalim lamala. And the sign for this, the mnemonic for this, is to put the low elevated. So the shamash is the lowly. The shamash is the one that's serving all the other ones. We're going to elevate it by putting it above. Od siman, and then another siman, srafim omdim mimal lo, which is kind of cute, right? Srafim malachim, but lisrof, fire. So they stand mimal lo, above lo. So lo means him, but as he continues to say, Rotzalomar lamed vav neros Chanukah, right? The 36 Chanukah candles. Milevada shamashim shemalikim bahen hem hasrafim yamdu mimal ha lo. You follow? Above the low. You know that it's 36 because all those, the boxes of those birthday candles that come out at 44, because they're counting the shamash. But safim omedim mimal lo. So therefore, it's supposed to be above. And then the last bit there, hidlik al shemen zayis. The Maharil used to use olive oil. Doesn't say why. Just as it used to use olive oil. At this point, I don't know if it's because it burns better. I don't know if it's because of the nace. I have no idea. But then you get the kolbo, the third in our triumvirate, to whom the Ramah is linked. A mitzvah hamuvcheres b'shemen zayis lefi shabo haya hanes. The reason to use olive oil is because the miracle happened with olive oil in the first place. I trust we don't need to recount the nace here. So we're going to go with that assumption that it happened with olive oil. The Ramah, now we go back to the Ramah in source number 4. After saying that olive oil is best, he says, "V'im ein shemen zayis matzui." What if you don't have olive oil? Mitzvah bashmanim she'oran zach v'naki. So the mitzvah is to use oils that have pure, clean light. Okay, so in other words, it's olive oil first, and then it's other oils. And then he says, "V'noagim b'medinos elu b'hadlik b'ner shel shava." The practice in our lands is to light with a wax candle. Ki oran salul kamo shemen, because the light is clear, just like with oil. So let me ask you how you read that Ramah. Is the Ramah saying that olive oil is ideal? In the absence of olive oil, we use other oils, but wax is just as good as other oils? Or is he saying, we use olive oil as the ideal? In the absence of olive oil, we use other oils, but wax is just as good as anything, including olive oil. Do you think he's saying that wax is better than other oils, or do you think he's even saying wax is better than olive oil? I don't want to bias you with my opinion. I want to hear how you read this. Equivalent to which?
Wax is equivalent to the oil.
Wax equivalent to olive oil?
No, I think he's just making a statement.
But where would he put it on this scale?
It sounds like he prefers oil.
He prefers
olive oil and other oils.
Third choice.
Yeah.
Third choice.
Third choice? Okay. So I'll tell you what happened. I was looking around to see who else had a discussion anywhere about oil versus wax, and I heard a shir on YU Torah from Rav Shai Shechter, son of Rav Hershel Shechter, and a Talmid Chacham in his own right. And the way he read this was what Mark was saying, which is we use wax even over olive oil.
Over?
Yeah, was that what you were saying? That wasn't what you were saying.
I said they're equivalent.
You'd be in good company if you said it. Okay. The way that he read this was that the Ramah is saying olive oil is mitzvah namuvchar, other oils if you can't use olive oil. But the truth is, we use wax because it produces great light, and therefore we prefer that even over olive oil. I don't think that's what the Ramah said. I have to email him. I don't read it that way. I think what the Ramah here is saying is olive oil is mitzvah amuvchar. In the absence of that, other oils, because they have a nice light. But the truth is, wax does just as good a job as these other oils, and therefore in the absence of olive oil, I would go with wax. But I think his preferred is olive oil.
Yeah, I mean, he clearly says that.
Yeah,
They didn't have olive trees growing in Krakow.
so that's why I brought you sources 7 and 8. Regarding the olive trees of Krakow, which would be a fine name for a book. The truth of the matter is, I looked around, and it does seem like olive oil was available, but at a great, great expense. I found that quite a bit. There's actually a phrase, which I found in one source, that to describe someone who is wealthy, they would say, he has dumplings in oil. That was considered to be, I guess that's why they went with latkes instead of sufganiyot, because they weren't people who had dumplings in oil. But olive oil was grown around the Mediterranean. There were wealthy people who could import it from Spain and Italy. But rank and file, certainly in the Jewish community, in the 16th century in Poland, good luck getting, being able to afford olive oils. Take a look at source number 7. I brought you a couple of examples of this. This is from Food and Drink in Medieval Poland. In both Western Europe and Poland, pork lard was the primary cooking fat, obviously not among ours. Where the French may have used olive oil, Poles used hemp or poppy seed oils instead. So they might have been happy, but they weren't using olive oil. That's one example.
Could you use pork lard though? According to some, you could, right? Because it would.
For your menorah? So it's funny, I had a discussion at the end of this year, and I cut it off because I was afraid it would go too long. There is a discussion about using treif oil for this, and whether that's a consideration, whether you're allowed to use treif oil. There are a couple of concerns. One concern is being treif, the other is hakvivein ala fechasecha, is considered to be a sub-quality thing. You have no other use for it. But basically, don't use treif oil. It's a bad idea. The other piece here is just, it's a Wikipedia page, but don't hold that against it. Regional cuisines of medieval Europe. Olive oil was among the ubiquitous ingredients around the Mediterranean, but remained an expensive import in the north, where oil of poppy, walnut, hazel, and filbert was the most affordable alternative. Butter and lard, especially after the terrible bloodletting of the population during the Black Death, was used in considerable quantities in the northern and northwestern regions, especially in the Low Countries. Almost universal in middle and upper class cooking all over Europe was the almond, which was in the ubiquitous and highly versatile almond milk, which was used as a substitute in dishes that otherwise required eggs or milk, though the bit of variety came along much later. And of course you get that in the Ramah with his kashrus discussions about almond milk and marasayan, right? That's a whole other discussion. But the point is, olive oil was considered to be an expensive import, and therefore, I think what the Ramah is saying is, I prefer olive oil, a la the kolbo maril Mordechai, whether the Mordechai really said it or not. The rationale for doing so, for wanting olive oil, we'll go back to the kolbo, is because of the nace. The Maharal of Prague had a different take. He said you have to use olive oil, but he said you have to use oil, period. He did not like wax candles at all. And I have to tell you the truth. I'm going to go through this source with you because it's important to see, but I have to admit that I don't fully understand what he's talking about. Because what he's doing here is a quasi-mystical or more than quasi-mystical thing when he explains it. Basically, the idea, to prep you for the source, the idea that the Maharal has is that if you use a wax candle, it's automatically an avuka. It's a torch automatically, even with a single wick. A nair, by definition, is oil. An avuka is wax. Take a look at the piece that I brought you here. It's from his Ner Mitzvah. He says, I've seen the things that people do, and they're surprising to me. So yesh lizkor osam, I should mention them. Someone who's sharp, someone who's careful in mitzvos, he'll contemplate what I say here, and then he'll choose the path that's good for him. So I'm going to tell you about things that people do that I don't approve of. Ha'echad. Number one. Masharov olam noakin lasos neros shel shava lahadlik bo. The fact that the majority of people are using wax candles. Except for those few who adopt olive oil because of the miracle in the Beis HaMikdash being with olive oil. And he says, Kilafia nira, shu pasol ner Chanukah legamri. He says, in my opinion, I think wax is entirely disqualified. Dilo nikra ner klal. That's not called an air. Rak ze nikra ner shenosin Hashemen bekli umanichin sham hapsila. It's only a ner if you put oil in a bowl and you put the wick in the bowl. Sheze nikra ner. That's ner. Lo kasher korchen hashav al hapsila. Not when they wrap wax around the wick. V'chein chelev shekorchen al hapsila, or animal fat that they wrap around the wick. Lav nerhu. That's not a ner. Rak avuka. Only an avuka. And here he gives you, he goes through a long piece on this. I had Rahmanas on you, and I only bring you a piece of it. He says, Kedarminin b'medrash. Domim hatzadikim lifnei hashchina kener b'fnei ha'avuka. Medrash says that the tzadikim in front of the Shechina are like a single lamp in front of an avuka, in front of a torch. Uperish said, what does that mean? Ki tzadikim yesh lem neshama zaka. He says tzadikim have a pure soul. Shenikra haneshama ner, which the neshama is called a ner. Uchadechsiv ner Hashem nishmas adam. Ve'ena neshama shehua or shemekabel aguf milamala sholetes b'chol aguf. He says the neshama, which is the fire that the body receives from above, it doesn't affect the entire body. It doesn't consume the entire body. It's on one point within the body. When it comes to Hashem being manifest in this world, we can't tolerate the entire Shekhinah. It would destroy everything. We can't contain it. We can only accept a little bit of it. And that's like an avuka or sholeit b'chol Hashem, in which the fire affects all of the fuel. And the oil does not accept the entire light. That's the difference between avuka and ner. As I said, it's a little bit hard to grasp what he's saying. And even having read through the whole thing, like multiple times, it's hard to grasp what he's saying. But essentially his idea is that if you're using a standard oil lamp, of any type of oil, then the way it works is, a little bit of oil is absorbed into the wick, and that's what's burned. That's the way that you do it, and at the end of the day, your wick remains. Whereas when you use a wax candle, the entire wick gets burned. Right? As you burn down your fuel, you also burn the wick. Nothing remains. He says, by definition, that's an avuka. So the Maharal's position is much more strong. Right now, the positions we have are the following. Let's make sure that we know what we're saying. We have the Gemara in Shabbos that says initially everything is fine. All shmanim and psilos. I shouldn't say everything because the Gemara didn't discuss wax. Right? The Gemara said all oils and all wicks are fine. You then have the statement that we prefer olive oil, which seems to be because of the miracle. And then you have the Maharal who says, I don't care if it's olive oil, but it's got to be oil because otherwise it's not kosher for you to use. In the end, the Mishnah Berurah in source 10 says, Shava, on the Ramah's statement about using wax, Umikol makom mitzvah b'shel shemen tfei mineros shel shava da'yidei hashemen nasa hanes. Better to use oil rather than use wax, because that's how the nace happened, and he's quoting the tshuva of the Ma'ari Bruna, well before him. So any fuel seems to be fine. The preference for olive oil is because of the nace. The preference for oil in general will be the idea of it being a ner versus being an avuka. Parenthetically, one wonders if the Maharal would also be makil on this basis, right? For Havdalah. You're supposed to use an avuka for Havdalah. Would he say that the avuka is okay if you use any wax candle? Is that an avuka? Okay. That's all one approach. But I want to show you an entirely different approach. Or it's really two approaches, technically. Right? We have the miracle one and we have the avuka issue. But I want to show you a different approach altogether. This approach says it's not about the miracle, it's about the Beis HaMikdash. Take a look at source number 11. Tell me in source number 11, as we read it, where you find the practice of lighting the menorah. My Chanukah, the Gemara asks, what's the nature of Chanukah? The Tana Rabbanan, it's a brisa. B'chavei b'Kislev Yomei de Chanukah T'manya Inun. Starting on the 25th of Kislev, we have 8 days of Chanukah. D'lal Mispeit Bahon, Ud'lal Hisanos Bahon. No eulogizing, no fasting. Shek Shenichnesu Yevanim LaHeichal Timu Kol Hashmanim Shebeheichal. Because when the Greeks came into the Beis Hamikdash, they contaminated all of the oil. Uchshegavra Malchus Beis Chashmonoim v'Nitzchum. And when the Chashmonoim won, Badku v'lo matzu alapach echad shel shemen shayamunach b'chosamo shel Kohen Gadol. They examined and found only one jug of oil marked with the seal of the Kohen Gadol. V'lo haya bo elo lahadlik yom echad. It could only last for one day. Naseh bo nes ve'eliku me'imenu shmona yamim. Miraculously, they were able to light for 8 days. Lashana acheres kav'um ba'asaum yamim tovim ba'halel v'hoda'ah. And the next year, they said these are going to be yamim tovim for halal and hoda'ah.
There's no mention of the candles.
There's no mention of candles whatsoever here, right? Doesn't that thing?
There's a stream of critiques that kind of say that what happened, where did it come along? They're saying that the thrill of Hanukkah kind of was dimmed, excuse the pun, and a few years later, however many years later, they decided to add a facet to it that wasn't like part of the original commemoration.
Correct.
There's a stream of...
You got it, and that's where we're going. Okay. Because not only is it not here in the Gemara, but it's also not in Al-Hanisim either. Right? Al-Hanisim doesn't mention anything about the institution of the menorah. It does say, Hidliku neros b'chatzos kochecha, but that's not talking about menorah. Right? Chatzos kochecha connotes something to do with the Beis Hamikdash, not lighting a menorah in people's homes. It seems to be lighting flames to demonstrate victory, and the days were established. So indeed, as Jay points out, some Achronim suggest, and some fairly significant names among them, that Neros Chanukah were not part of the original celebration at all. However, not that, to borrow the pun, it's because the light of the joy became dim, but rather because we're not lighting the menorah because of the nes. We're lighting the menorah as a Zecher LaMikdash. Meaning, once the Beis HaMikdash is destroyed, then they say to commemorate the menorah of the Beis HaMikdash, we are going to light on Hanukkah. The time when we mark the miracle that happened with the menorah originally. Rabbi Yitzchak Yehuda Trunk of Kutna, in his Chazdei Avos, is one of those who takes this view. Rabbi Tal Zolti, in his Mishnah Yaibetz, is another one. I've seen it quoted as being in the Harei Kedem, but honestly, I looked in the Harei Kedem and I couldn't find it there. But Rabbi Yitzchak Yehuda Trunk notes the Gemara's language that we pointed out, but also notes the language of the Rambam. Take a look at source number 12. Because of this victory, because of the miracle, the Chachamim enacted Sheyushmonas hayamim ha'elu shetchilasan milel chamisha ve'esrim bekislev yimei simcha v'halel umadlikin ben haneros be'erev al pischei habatim b'chol layla v'layla mishmona halelos laharos u'legalos hanes. So he says, look at his language carefully. The Chachamim of that generation enacted that they should have a days of celebration starting from the 25th of Nisan, right? Yimei simcha v'halel, one thought, and they light candles in the evening at the entrance to the home in order to demonstrate the nes. So Kutna says that's a separate thought. He says the enactment initially was Yimei Simcha V'Halel, and separately this is what we do. But it's not part of the original takana. That's his view of what the Rambam is saying. I have to admit that I think that that's weak in terms of the read of the Rambam. Because the Rambam in Shoresh Aleph in his Sefer HaMitzvos talks about mitzvos derabanan, and he talks about them enacting that you should light the menorah on Hanukkah during the second Beis HaMikdash, not after. So I find it difficult to accept that this is what the Rambam means. However, the Ramban is more clear. Take a look at source number 13, please. Ramban says, "V'ra'isi od bilamdenu." He quotes in Medrash, which is actually in Medrash Tanchuma, and in Medrash Rabbah. Amar lo HaKadosh Baruch Hu LaMoshe. Right? This is the beginning of Parshas Baloscha, where Aaron gets the menorah. So he says, Hashem says to Moshe, "Lech amor la'Aaron, go tell Aaron, al tityarei, don't fear. L'gedola mizos hatamucha, and you're getting more than just these karbanos of the Nisim. HaKarbanos calls man shebeis hamikdash kayim eino again. Karbanos are around as long as there's a beis hamikdash. Aval haneros la'olam el mul pnei hamenorah ya'iru. But the flames, those will always burn opposite the menorah, opposite the face of the menorah. And birchas kohanim will also never cease. So the Ramban says, "V'hinei davar yadua, shekshe'ein beis hamikdash kayim v'karbanos betelin v'bnei chorbano af haneros betelos." He says we know that when there's no beis hamikdash and the karbanos cease because of korban, and you don't have the menorah either. Avalo ramzu el leneros Chanukah Chashmonoi sheinoheges af la'achar korban begaluseinu. But it's talking about the light of the menorah, which continues even though we go into Galus, and he reads that to mean that our menorah is a continuation of the menorah in the Beis HaMikdash, and that's his contention. His contention is that we light the menorah to continue the Beis HaMikdash menorah, but not as a direct outgrowth of the original events of Chanukah. As I said, Rav Tzalel Zolti takes the same position. He notes various reasons for doing so, including the Ravid in Hilchos Brachos, source number 14. The Ravid writes, regarding the bracha that we make on Chanukah candles, right? Lahadlik ner Chanukah or lahadlik ner shel Chanukah, depending on your practice. He says, "V'im yomar kol mitzvah she'imi divrayim omer al shehi ke'ein rishus." If you're going to take the view that when you're dealing with a mitzvah derabanan, you say al the action in the bracha, not le, kasha li ner Chanukah, then why is that you say lahadlik ner? It should be al hadlakat. So he gives you one answer to say it's because there's no limit. Maybe this is different because there's no limit to it, and therefore it makes more sense to say lahadlik instead of al. Inami, but look at his second answer. Alternatively, the answer is because it's linked to the menorah in the Beis Hamikdash, which is a deoraisa, and therefore we treat this as a quasi deoraisa, and therefore we make the bracha lahadlik. So that's an argument for doing so. There are other sources that he brings in order to support this idea that there's a link between the menorah of the Beis Hamikdash and ours. The Ran in the beginning of Hilchos Chanukah says we don't use the light of our menorah on Chanukah because it's supposed to be like the menorah in the Beis Hamikdash, right? An idea which is somewhat debated, but that's the Ran's position. So this is this is another reason why we should use olive oil. Right? Because the menorah in the Beis HaMikdash uses olive oil. There are some differences, though, between this and the first explanation. Right? The first explanation said we want to commemorate the Nes. 1b was the Maharal, that it's in order to qualify as an heir. And now, approach number 2 is you want to model it on the lighting of the menorah in the Beis HaMikdash. So what about using canola oil, according to these different views? If it's to commemorate the Nes, does it have to be olive oil? Maybe, because that was olive oil. But you can at least make the argument that oil per se is already sufficient. If you want to mirror the Beis HaMikdash, then it becomes harder, because that's key to its identity. Maybe. And of course the Maharal will be fine either way. But there's a fundamental problem here. Either way, Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi does not seem to be concerned about mirroring the miracle or the menorah. Right? Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi was the one who made the comment way back when, in source number 2, Kol hashmanim kulan yafin laner. And he didn't care. He said, Shemin Zayis ben Amuvchar, because it's a more pure light, not because of the Nes. Right? His focus was, what's your light? What's your light going to be like? He didn't care about the issue of mirroring anything. So the question is, you have these fine explanations for why we should use oil. Why didn't Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi care about any of them? What would you say?
He focused on a different part of the mitzvah.
What do you mean?
Well, he focused on like the Pirsumi part, the part that just shows the menorah, as opposed to it doesn't matter how it's being lit, but that it's nicer.
So, and it just happens to be that convergent evolution, we end up with olive oil because that also leads me back to olive oil.
Right.
Could be. Rav Moshe Feinstein has an interesting explanation in his Dibros Moshe. Take a look at source 15, please. This is our first answer. I'm going to go off for a couple of answers. But Rav Moshe's answer is this. V'nira shatam hu mishum t'shemen zayis shehuchshor lemenorah shehu kasis kim'at shaleka ata bizmanenu. He says you're forgetting something. If you want to be authentic, you want to do real reenactment, it's not enough to get olive oil. The Torah specifies that it has to be katit lamaor. Right? Katit, kasis, means it has to be pounded. Not when you press the olives with a board, but it's a pounded oil, which is more expensive, harder to get, it's more rare. And if you really want to mirror what they did in the Beis Hamikdash, that's what you have to use. And Moshe says, that's not around. This shemen kasis. Kimat shaleka ata bizmanenu. Shebnei adam ein mishtamshin bazeh. People don't use it. Right? As a matter of fact, the Gemara in Menachos says, regarding the menorah, we require that you use shemen kasis. Regarding a mincha, you don't.
There must be guys doing it today. That's right.
Well, I'm going to come back to that in a second. I'm going to come back to that. But but it's perplexed. But yes, for sure, and they stamp it and sell it to the tourists. But why is it that a mincha which you eat and it's the carbon, right? It goes on the mizbeach and everything. Why doesn't that require shemen kasis? So the Gemara's answer is because Hashem has mercy on the Mamon Shal Yisrael. If you're going to have to use that kind of olive oil for all the menachos, it's just too expensive. So Hashem says, I'm not going to require that of you. You don't have to go that route. But Rav Moshe says, Hashem says, this is too much. This would be just making this kind of olive oil just for the menorah. Therefore, we don't have to use the shemen zayis that would be kosher for the menorah in the Beis Hamikdash. And once you say that, Rabbah, Abaye's Rebbe, says, well then why do you need shemen zayis altogether? It's not authentic anyway. If you're using the wrong kind of olive oil, you might as well use canola. It doesn't make a difference. That's Rav Moshe's shita. My problem with it is Mark's point, just made a little bit larger, which is we have so many mitzvos for which we have to obtain hard-to-get things, and we have to spend money, right? I mean, it's not as though the world makes shmur matzah, such that we should pay $36 a pound or whatever it is now, to be able to have shmur matzah. Yeah, now, punkt on Chanukah, okay, shmur matzah, I understand, it's a del raisu, shmartem es hamatzah, fine. But you get my point. If the Torah would have said, or if the Shulchan Aruch would have said, you have to use shemen zayis kasis, so we would make shemen zayis kasis, and that would be it. And there would be a resource, and people would pay big money for it, and that's the way it would be. I have a hard time, even though I get what he's saying, and it fits the fact that we're not demanding shemen zayis. Nonetheless, I have a hard time accepting that as the explanation. I think the answer to it may simply be that when it comes to issues of zecher, we really don't need it to be that precise. And you see it regarding, first of all, let's take the Beis Hamikdash idea, right? The approach that we're doing this in order to remember the Beis Hamikdash. The truth of the matter is there are other Beis Hamikdash memorials which just aren't that precise. Take a look at source number 16. The Gemara in Menachos talks about counting the Omer, and it says, Amemar mani yomei v'lo shavue. Amemar counted the days. He said today is day 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, whatever, all the way up to 49, and he didn't bother with which is 3 weeks and 4 days to the Omer. He didn't do that. Why? Says Rashi, Amemar said, the counting we do today is not the original obligation. We don't have a carbon Omer. It's just to remember the Beis Hamikdash. So it's enough that I count the days. It doesn't have to be exactly the way they did it in the Beis Hamikdash. Ditto when it comes to carrying the lulav and the arba minim all 7 days, right? The Torah says, Ulkachtem lachem bayom harishon. Take the lulav on day one. In the Beis Hamikdash, usmachtem lefnei Hashem Elokechem shivas yamim. You celebrate for 7 days. But for us, it was only 1 day outside the Beis Hamikdash. So why do we do 7 days? Again, to remember the Beis Hamikdash. So take a look at Tosfos. He deals with the fact that the esrog can have certain gaps in it on the other 6 days. Not on day one, but on the other days. And he says, Nira dahainu taima, this is the reason. Mishum diyom rishon de'oraisa b'gvulin, ushar yom de'rabanan zeichel mikdash. Because the first day of Sukkot is when it's a biblical mitzvah. The other days it's a derabanan to remember the Beis HaMikdash. And he quotes you the Gemara in Sukkot to that effect. Hilkach be'ikar halakicha kegon arba minim. So when it comes to the mitzvos that are the essence of the mitzvah, like the fact that you have to have the 4 species, the idea that each person has their own, tikkun b'shar yomei kein d'oraisa. So they said, okay, all the days will be modeled on the biblical. V'chein b'hadar, and also that you're supposed to have a beautiful one, mishum hider mitzvah. Aval b'chaser, but the fact that it may be lacking a little bit, v'shaul, or the idea that it could be borrowed. Lo tikkun, that they did not require for the other days. Why? Because it's a zeichel mikdash. It doesn't have to be precisely the same. Ditto for our seder, right? When we do korech, we don't use roast, right? And yes, we have the explanation we don't use roast lest someone call it the carbon pesach and get into trouble. But fundamentally, it doesn't have to be precisely the way it was there. I even saw that argument brought once by somebody to argue that that's why for Hoshanos there are shuls that'll do it after Hallel, right? Instead of doing it after Musaf. So I always assume the reason why people do Hoshanos in some shuls after Hallel is convenience. Right? You don't want to bother Kiyo. It's already out. Let me take care of it and put it away and be done. Not to mention, then people can leave earlier. So all sorts of reasons to do it. But he argued, no, it's because you don't want to parallel. It should be with the Musaf. But you don't want to parallel exactly what they did in the Beis HaMikdash. You don't need to parallel. And then you also have this other element of, I didn't bring it on the sheet, but there's this other element of not wanting to mimic the Beis HaMikdash too directly. Right? You're not allowed to make a 7-branch menorah. Right? That's a concern because you're creating something that's like what was in the Beis HaMikdash. You're not supposed to be too similar. So, in terms of Zeichel HaMikdash, I think I've shown ample precedent that you don't have to be that precise. So it's not such a big deal if you don't have olive oil, just as long as it's oil. That's already sufficient, and it's also not Shemin Kasis. And in terms of Pirsumei Nisa, it also doesn't have to be, I think, that precise. There are different kinds of Pirsumei Nisa. When you look at source number 18, Rashi there talks about the idea that you read the Megillah in translation, so that everybody should understand. But he says, the Gemara says, you're Yotze if you hear the Megillah, even without that. So Rashi says, even though people don't know what they are hearing, Shoalin es Hashomin. They ask the others who are listening, and they ask, what's the story? What was the miracle? And people will tell them. So even though they can't hear the story and get it from that, once they know the story is being read, they'll ask other people, and that's the way they'll get their information. And I think the same thing is true in general regarding their pirsum here, that we don't really require that it tell the full story. It just has to be enough that it's going to lead people to the story. And my proof of it is, what's the mitzvah? What's the core mitzvah for Ner Chanukah? What's the core mitzvah for Ner Chanukah? How many do you have to light? 1 flame per house. Right? Whether you're on day 1 or day 8 doesn't make a difference, right? I used to live in Allentown, Pennsylvania, and there were good German Catholics who lived in the area, and all through December, they would light in each window of the house 1 candle. That was what they did, and so it was beautiful. The first night of Hanukkah, everyone was celebrating Hanukkah. And if we all followed Ner Yishu Beso the way they do, then we would have been celebrating together for all 8 days. But Ner Yishu Beso doesn't tell anyone the story of Hanukkah. Even if you use Shemin Kasis, it's not going to tell you the story of Hanukkah. The answer is that you don't have to. The Pirsum is simply in noting that something special is going on without telling the story precisely by mimicking what was done in the Beis HaMikdash. And I bring you one other element here as a basis for this. the issue of the Jew who's in a place on Hanukkah where there are no other Jews. Right? You have to go on a business trip, and you end up in Altoona, Pennsylvania. There's nobody there who's Jewish, or so you think, because there always is. But you know what I'm saying. You go to some place where there are no Jews. So, do you light the menorah?
Yeah.
There's no Pirsumei Nisa. Who are you publicizing it for?
For you.
There's nobody to buy it. You're off on your own. For yourself? Doesn't seem to be an imperative to do that. If it's really just you, right? We talk about coming home at night and waking people up and making enemies in order to be able to fulfill Ner Hanukkah. If you could just do it for yourself, this wouldn't be a discussion. So the question is, what are you doing? So Shimon Sofer in source number 19 says, V'hine, hadar bein goyim, someone who lives among the nations, nira li mechuyev lahadlik al pesach beitzum ibachutz. He says you have to light at the entrance to your home, or b'chalona smucha, by the window close to it. D'yisparsem hanes bein hagoyim. It will be publicized among the nations. Sheyishalu maihu. They'll ask, what is this? V'yivada lahem al yedei zeh hamaisa. And that way they'll find out about the story. V'ikar hanes, and the miracle. Umikra malayhu. It's a pasuk. V'isgadilti v'isgadishti v'nodati le'nei goyim rabim. Right? Kiddush Hashem before the nations of the world. The common mikros demora malzeh the Kadosh Baruch Hu medaktek al chilush shmo bein hagoyim v'kiddush shmo beinehem. Hashem cares about His reputation among the nations. So therefore, there's Pirsumei Nisa for them. But again, they're not learning the story by seeing the menorah. There's a step of inquiring that has to happen in order to do so. So it doesn't matter if it's olive oil or not. The Rav Soloveitchik took this view as well, based on, in part, at least, source number 20. Right? The Gemara says that you light the menorah ad shetichla regel min hashuk, until people stop in the marketplace. And they talk about whose regel this is. And it's rigla de tarmodoi, the legs of the tarmodoi. Who are these Tarmodoi? So Rashi says in source number 20, Shem Uma, this is a nation, Malakte Eitzim Dakim. They would collect small pieces of wood. Umisavin Bashuk, Gachahochem Neashuk Lebatayam Mishachashecha. They'd wait in the market until people went home after dark. Umavir Batayan Ura. They need to light up their homes. Ukshatzvichin Leitzim Yotzim Ekonemehem. They had the market for wood. But look at the beginning of Rashi. Shem Uma. These aren't Jews. I am defining my candle lighting based on when the Tarmudai are going to be out in the street. So Soloveitchik said, clearly you light for non-Jews. Now the truth of the matter is, you could argue that no, it's that the Tarmudai are out and therefore other people are going to go out in the street to get fuel for their candles. That's number one. Number two, there are other explanations of what Tarmudai means. This is not the only one.
It could also just be the timing. This is the time that you wrote.
Yeah, it could also be that. I mean, it's for sure not ironclad, as I prove, and I should know. Rav Moshe Feinstein disagreed. Rav Moshe Feinstein held there's no mitzvah of publicizing it for non-Jews. He said only for Jews. Not everybody agreed on this point. Sorry.
It's also like in Toronto, like besides the Jews lighting candles, what's that group that, what's it called, the holiday? They have the Lights Up Festival. They're from Africa.
Kwanzaa?
Was it?
Do they light candles for Kwanzaa?
Was it?
Okay.
Like
that's the other one. That's the festival you're talking about. I don't know the minhagim. But it could be. So the bottom line that emerges here, and this is what I want to make sure to come away with in all of this, is that we have 3 tracks, really. I guess you could say 3 tracks. Well, 4 tracks that bring us to olive oil. Right. The first track is Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. Right? It's a better quality of flame. Right? That's your first approach, is the better quality flame. And really, if I was left with that, I could have just as easily said, okay, so the wax burns well, and you'll use that. I could have accepted that point of view. It's whatever's going to burn nicer. We already use sesame oil, if that would have been the type of flame that we wanted. Your second approach is the miracle. You want to commemorate the nace, and that's what our focus is. Your third approach is this maharal, that it has to be oil because it's an avuka. Otherwise, if you use wax, it's an avuka. And your fourth approach is that it's a continuation of the Beis Hamikdash. It's a zeichel hamikdash. You're continuing the menorah that burned there, and you happen to orient it around Chanukah. Our main question is, in the event that you're telling me that it's about the miracle, or it's about zeichel hamikdash, I don't understand why the Gemara doesn't say it has to be olive oil. If that's really true, Right? If it's just the quality of the flame, I understand. If it's about avuka, I understand. It could be anything that fits the criteria. But if it's a miracle or about zeichel mikdash, why isn't it olive oil? To which the answer to the question that we're getting is because either of Moshe's position, which is you're not being precise anyway, because you can't do shemen kasis, it's too expensive, God isn't going to require it, the Rabbanan aren't going to require it of us, so therefore it's not going to be a requirement. That's Moshe's answer. Or I think the answer really is that because you don't need to be precise when you're dealing with the miracle or even when you're dealing with Zeichel HaMikdash, your goal is not, this tells the story in and of itself. Your goal is to create a conversation. That's what Zeichel HaMikdash is, and that's what Pirsumei Nisa is. It's to start a conversation by having something that evokes the image, and then it's your responsibility, like Rashi said regarding Megillas Esther, or like Rosh Shimon Sofer said in his Hazaras Tshuva, regarding the menorah. Your goal fundamentally is that people should ask you, what is that about? And as long as you have that, everything else is taken care of. And therefore, in the absence of olive oil, the argument can indeed be made that any oil will suffice. And that thought I brought you is the Meiri in source 21, where he writes, he says wax is kosher for Chanukah. But he says it's beautiful for the mitzvah to do it with oil, because the miracle was with oil. Any oil. And yet, shemen zayis min hamuvchar. Maybe nice, but certainly not a requirement. Chaim.
So what would the Tosfot right in the beginning to say that when it comes to Shabbos, their shemen zayis min?
Because Tosfos isn't dealing in a wax candle world. Tosfos only has oils, and the Gemara has decided that shemen zayis has the best light.
What about the other shemen?
No, but that's the thing. He has said that shemen zayis has the clearest light. That's what the Gemara has established before that. That's Rabbi Tarfon. That it's not in the Gemara that I brought here, but Rabbi Tarfon's position is that shemen zayis is the one that will produce the clearest light, and you have no concern about the flame jumping around and so on, and therefore that's why Tosfos will prefer that for Shabbos.
So what does that imply for us nowadays when it comes to Shabbos?
So for us, we assume that the wax candle is the equivalent in terms of the quality of the flame.
So it's only about quality, it's not about anything else.
For Shabbos?
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah. I believe so, yeah.
Isn't that time intensive? You got it, right?
What do you mean?
Yeah, it has to burn for a certain amount of time.
I mean, Shabbos candles? Yeah, until you're home, eating your dinner.
Well, this is Shabbos candle, not time.
Shabbos candles, not talking about Chanukah, right. There is one, I will note one other thing, just because you pointed that out for Chanukah, and I should really mention it. There is a nafkamina between whether using oil or wax on a different front. The Magen Avram writes, it's not with him originally, it's before him, but the Magen Avram writes that if you're going to use wax, you should use a long candle because it looks nicer to have a big long candle. Whereas if you're using oil, there's no hidur involved in having more oil in the bowl. It doesn't do anything to have more oil in the bowl. So with wax, there actually is a hidur of make sure that you have the bigger candle as opposed to the oil, where it's, as long as it's sufficient. Now again, Friday night you will require more. But yeah, that's an interesting side note.
What about those new candles that are solidified oil?
Yeah.
It's not comparable to the mitzvah oil, or that doesn't make that.
Yeah, so you had to wonder about that, no? At that point, does it look like what they had in the Beis HaMikdash at all? There are those who get more precise in terms of reflecting the Beis HaMikdash. There's this shita that says that it has to be in a kli. If you look at the Piskei Tshuvos in Or Chaim Tafresh Ayin Gimel, I dropped it for the shir, but he has a whole discussion about people who insist it has to be in a kli in order for it to qualify, like the menorah in the Beis HaMikdash. He even gives you, I think it's Mishnah Berurah actually gives you a hierarchy of kalim, like what's the best quality to use and so on. So there is this idea of mirroring the Beis HaMikdash even more closely. I do think that if the oil stays solid, until it burns down to that point, then I think that you're not mirroring. But I think that actually it's not the way it works, right? The warmth of the flame liquefies it pretty quickly. Yeah. So in that case, you'd be okay. It's just for